so much for being with us, everyone. Today we are talking about opportunities abroad, and we're going to start out by introducing our panelists today. Seth Mahler is on the screen there. He is in Tel Aviv, Israel, and Jacob Silberlicht is in Ashkelon, and we're going to be chatting about opportunities abroad, what they consist of, why they can be such positive things for young lacrosse players. I'm Stephen Stamp. Thanks, lacrosse friends, for being here, and I hope everyone enjoys this discussion as we get rolling at the Global Lacrosse Summit. Jake, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So first of all, Stamper, thanks. I want to thank the Global Lacrosse Summit, Brad, and everybody who had a part in this for having us on. I love talking about Lax and what we do and, everything lacrosse around the world. So I'm excited for the opportunity. My name is Jake Silberlicht, originally from upstate New York. My lacrosse background is that I played 4 years at Hobart College in upstate New York. After that, I traveled to Adelaide, South Australia, where I played in their league for about a year. And then after that, I came straight to Israel, where I've been for 6 years and captain Team Israel's box and field team for the 6 years. And it's been quite the experience. And I've been lucky to do it with a really good friend, teammate, colleague of mine, Seth Mahler, who I'd like to for him to introduce himself.
Thanks, Jake. Stanford, thanks also for having us on today, and Global Lacrosse and Brad. It's a great opportunity for us just to showcase ourselves out here in Israel and, the lacrosse going on around the world. Similar to Jake, I grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut, played Division III lacrosse out west in California at Whittier College. After graduating, I had run my own club lacrosse program for a few years before moving over to Israel. I've been here for 7 years. It's gone by like a blink of an eye, and with Jake been captaining Team Israel on the box and the field, and it's been a great opportunity to keep playing and just growing the game in another country that didn't have lacrosse before we got here. So thanks for having us on.
It's a pleasure. I just want to take a moment. Jake, I'm just going to jump in for a second and thank our sponsors that are helping to make the Global Lacrosse Summit possible. Uncommon Fit, Major Series Lacrosse, Manitoba Lacrosse, Apex Lacrosse Events, Bear Paw Lacrosse Events, Sticks and Picks Podcast, and the PAR team. Should have done that before, but I just wanted to get it before we get fully flowing. So it's all yours now.
Beautiful. Thanks, Stamper. So I think how we'll do it is I'll just talk a little bit about my experience with lacrosse abroad, how I got to Israel, tell you a little bit about my story without boring you too much. And it's actually funny because Seth and I are teammates and colleagues and, friends now, but he was, responsible or partly responsible for getting me over here to Israel. So I'll talk about my story and then turn it over to Seth, and he can kind of elaborate on our programming here in Israel and what we have to offer. So like I said, I was, I'll go even a little further back. In high school, I was actually an ice hockey player. Loved the game, and lacrosse was kind of something that I stumbled upon, in the off season. My friends were doing it. My older brother was, really starting to play the game and enjoy the game. So I picked up lacrosse, picked up a lacrosse stick, and, I liked it, but I felt like I was a hockey player at heart. Then kind of senior year came around, and, I was into lacrosse, I was into hockey, but I think that the most opportunity for me was in the game of lacrosse. It's such a fast-growing sport. It's such a strong sense of community that, I thought it was a better direction to go than to continue with ice hockey. So I went to Hobart College. I actually followed my older brother there. He was a senior as I was a freshman. So I was lucky enough to get taken under his wing and, got to hang out with the seniors as a freshman. That was cool. But enjoyed my time there. Obviously lacrosse, Hobart's a Division I school. So, lacrosse is central to your career in college, and it's kind of my identity. Again, senior year rolled around, I was still a little bit uncertain what I was going to do, where I was going to work, where I was going to be. And again, lacrosse was just such a constant in my life. I wanted to keep it going. So I heard about an opportunity through a couple of my teammates, actually, who had graduated in front of me, about playing lacrosse abroad in South Australia, Adelaide, South Australia. So, it sounded like a great opportunity. I wasn't sure what else. I wasn't ready to make another decision. So I took the opportunity, flew to Adelaide, and there I was able to play for the club, East Torrens Payneham. They gave me opportunities to coach, to go into schools, to kind of develop the game on the ground over there, develop the sport. And it was very valuable to me. And while I was there, I was given the opportunity to come to Israel to do something similar. And at the beginning, I wasn't super interested in it. I didn't know anything, too much about Israel. I grew up, obviously I have a Jewish background, so I grew up, hearing about it, but it wasn't something that I was, super familiar with, and definitely not familiar with having lacrosse in Israel. So it was kind of an idea that was a little foreign to me. But after a little persuasion from, our executive director, Scott Neese, and a couple of other guys who ended up being my teammates, I made it over to Israel. And now, this is kind of where the Jake that you're seeing today on your screen kind of came to be. This is where I really started to, form an identity, with the game, playing abroad, coaching abroad. This is kind of what has kind of shaped me. So, I'm in Israel. I don't know a lick of Hebrew, and we're in the schools. We're coaching. We're kind of just developing the game. No one knows what lacrosse is in Israel at this point. This is, 6 or 7 years ago. So my job is to communicate, in, a little bit of English, a little bit of Hebrew, what this completely foreign sport is to Israeli children from the ages of 8 all the way to 18. So it was something that was very challenging for me, kind of put me outside of my comfort zone. But again, it was valuable. It was valuable experience that helped me to, be a problem solver, in a different language, be a problem solver in a different country, kind of be able to operate outside my comfort zone. And, living in Israel also presented another opportunity, which was to serve in the Israel Defense Force, which, again, put me way outside my comfort zone, even further outside my comfort zone. But, this was something that, these changes continued to be valuable to me and continue to help me find my identity, help me find my way. So I was in the IDF I ended up serving in the IDF for 2 years. Immediately after my release from the Army, I came back to Israel Lacrosse, where I'm now currently the director of youth development here in Israel. And I'm also, like I mentioned, I've been captaining the team for 6 years. And the topic of this kind of webinar is, opportunities abroad. And we're going to take the time, and Seth's going to take the time to pitch our programming. But I wanted to, take a few minutes to just express to everybody watching how valuable it is to, take these opportunities abroad. It doesn't have to be in Israel. It can be anywhere. To, play international lacrosse, or to travel abroad, to volunteer, to coach. It really is, a very, very valuable experience. And I think that, players today, as the game continues to grow, every player wants to play Division I. Everyone wants to play for Johns Hopkins. Everyone wants to play for Duke. But the fact of the matter is that not everyone can. And, you see players who may get discouraged, or players who think they belong there, maybe do or don't, or don't make the cut, or something like that. And maybe, lose interest in the game, or, kind of get turned off by that. And as a coach, I would encourage you to encourage your players to stick with the game, because it's not just a way to continue playing. It's a way to help continue to shape your identity, take you through life. It's such a constant for us lacrosse guys. And I feel, and I know that I'm not the only one who feels that way. You know, playing for Team Israel in itself, right? We've traveled all over the world. We're in the Czech Republic every year playing box lacrosse. We were in Africa a few summers ago playing lacrosse. We were in Finland playing box lacrosse. I can talk for hours about our experiences playing abroad. And those, without even, you know, explaining it all, are just super, super valuable to me. And I cherish those. And, you know, it's helped me, again, you know, sounds like a broken record, but, you know, it's helped me form an identity. And, you know, I'm happy that I stuck with the game, especially after being, you know, an ice hockey player growing up. And then again, you know, coaching abroad, you know, there's so many opportunities. We have opportunities in Israel to come and coach. There's opportunities in England to, you know, spend a semester, spend a summer there, you know, coaching, playing, and, you know, I always encourage young players to at least, you know, seek out these opportunities, at least, you know, learn more about it, because it's invaluable. And, you know, our lacrosse community is growing so fast, and it's, the more it grows, I feel like the tighter it even gets, right? Like I can go to any country across the world that has lacrosse and just drop the word lacrosse, and, you know, you're in there. And, you know, I've developed so many strong relationships, you know, friends I have thousands of miles away. So without boring you guys too much and talking about myself, I wanted to turn it over to Seth.
Actually, Jake, let me hop in for a second and ask a question just to follow up on some of that, because it does affect both of you. Is one point is you both were field lacrosse players, as you mentioned, you know, going to college and playing, and then you've both taken up the box game. And Israel has played in 2 world championships now, in Onondaga and then in Langley last fall. Won the European Championships, the first ever, back in 2017 in Turku, Finland, in a terrific tournament with a really exciting final game against the Czechs. And I'm just curious, with that, I mean, you've been developing your game quite a lot, having taken up box and working on field to keep raising the level. I'm curious how it balances working on your own game as a player, and Seth, this is for you too, working on your game as a player and developing the coaching and lacrosse development side of it, particularly as you know, you're trying to grow this. The National Training Center for Israel in Ashkelon is a pretty new facility. I mean, it's, the whole program is new. You talked about 6 or 7 years ago, you got started, and Israel lacrosse was only a couple of years old then. There's been a lot going on. How do you balance the player and administrator side and coach side?
Yeah, so Seth, I'll take this one here. It's actually, it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because first of all, let's talk about the whole box lacrosse, Israel box lacrosse, you know, program. It's, again, such a new thing, and, you know, it's already a tall order to explain what lacrosse is to an Israeli kid in a school. Now to explain that there's this type of lacrosse, field lacrosse, and there's this type of lacrosse, box lacrosse, certainly makes things a little more complicated. But you know, as far as our players, as far as our player pool, our Israeli player pool here, I think it helps legitimize to them a little bit, you know, that there are so many countries and there are so many opportunities out there to play, and that Israel is competing at a high level all around the world. It really helps. It really kind of drives, you know, motivation for young players, or, you know, just a love for the game and something to help them stick with it. As far as, you know, the training and the playing, it's a fun, interesting dynamic, because, you know, I get to wear all the hats, and sometimes I get to wear both of them at the same time. What does that mean? I get to coach youth lacrosse. So our players ages 8 to 15, I coach them every single day. After school, they come to our practices, and, you know, just teaching the fundamentals, which is what I love and what I'm good at. You know, 2 hands on the stick, you know, shoot it from here, all these kind of things. That's what I'm best at. So I love doing that. I also get to coach. I'm actually the head coach of the under-19 national team, and Seth's my general manager. So again, that's a little bit of a higher level. These players are starting to understand the concepts and offenses, defenses, that kind of thing. So I get to wear that hat. And we also have our domestic league called the ILL, the Israel Lacrosse League, where us men get to play, and that's alongside our U19 players. So yes, I coach these players, but they're starting to play at a high enough level now where they compete with us in our domestic league. And, you know, our players are always hungry to give us a beating out there. And, you know, I like to return the favor. But, you know, it's such a strong community of lacrosse here in Israel. And it's something that we are so proud of, you know, that we got to build from the ground up and just be a part of. But Seth, if you want to touch on a bit.
Yeah, just to add any of that, I think the question, you know, around balance, you know, we love lacrosse. We love everything we do. So whether we're coaching or we're playing or we're organizing a trip or an upcoming trip, we've got a lot of excitement personally for all of these things. So, you know, we're not currently in school, but you can imagine a high school student athlete, a college student athlete, you know, their days are planned kind of for them. When's practice, when's class. You know, we get to do that planning ourselves, whether organizing a school visit in the morning or a practice in the afternoon, whether it's break time or, you know, marking in my calendar when our men's games are. So, you know, yeah, it's a lot to juggle. We wear many hats, but, you know, this is our job. These are our lives. We love doing it and just have a lot of passion for it.
I also think it's important just to mention in 2018, for those who don't know, the World Championships were in Netanya, Israel. And I guess the last hat that I didn't mention is, you know, the captain of Team Israel. It's such a, you know, I'm grateful for the responsibility of, you know, being a role model for any kid who has ever picked up a lacrosse stick in Israel. And, you know, as players start to learn more about the game, you know, they're all over Instagram. They're seeing, you know, Paul Rabel and the PLL and all these pro players. And, you know, now they come to Israel and they get to see, you know, Coach Jake and Coach Seth playing against them. So, you know, it's definitely a heavy responsibility, but it's one that I'm grateful for because it really gives me the opportunity to give back to the game. You know, as I mentioned and babbled on about, it's given me so much opportunity and it's been very valuable for me. I'm, you know, I feel so much need and want to just pass it forward and open those doors for younger players, you know, especially Israeli players, but really young players all over the world.
One of the things that I think is important to keep in mind, and we are going to get to Seth's things that he was getting ready to talk about, but one thing that occurs to me is you guys have really gone all in. You've moved to Israel. You've lived there, as you said, for 7 8 years, and it's become a long-term thing. But there are people who also will do something where the general concept of going and playing lacrosse abroad or being involved with lacrosse abroad, who will go to Australia, like Jake, like you started out with, or to go to different countries and just do it for 4 months or a year or a couple of years. So there's both sides of the spectrum, right? Or both parts where you can just go and do something and really benefit from it, doing it for a period of weeks or months, or it can be, I mean, this is kind of career stuff for you guys.
Sure. Yes.
I mean,
you got it, Seth.
Jake talked about a lot of our grassroots efforts and our youth development. And like he said, no one knew what lacrosse was here, you know, 8 years ago. So there's, other than myself and Jake, who have been here, you know, in the long haul, there's been countless others who have been here for 10 days, a few months, a year, who have helped us laid that groundwork. And now we have hundreds of kids playing from Beersheba up to Netanya, you know, in multiple different cities. So there's a lot of people that have come over in the past for our programming, internships, to live. So there's a lot of people that have helped us along the way. And then, you know, going forward, we have opportunities for high school Jewish athletes to come to Israel over winter break. Further than just Jewish athletes, in the summer we have an open summer league for any player over 18 of any faith, of any background, from all over the world. We've had players from all over Europe, from Africa, Canada, the States, all over the NCAA landscape, players from other national teams from abroad, players that are trying to make other national teams from abroad. But we've run a successful summer league here in Israel, 50 to 100 players, depending upon the summer, guys from all over the world. And it's just a great opportunity to meet new players, to get better, to coach. Any of these opportunities, we're connecting. Anyone that's coming into Israel, we're connecting with our youth players. That's really important to us. A, that they know what we're doing on the ground here, and B, so that they can help us grow the game, and also so that the kids can, take part in what we get to do on a daily basis. Something we've done in the past is a gap year program. Hasn't been too tremendous, 1 or 2 kids a year, but we're really looking to push that going forward. I think this whole pandemic across the world has got people kind of up in the air, what's going on, maybe their thoughts are changing. So previously we were kind of just offering gap years to, the in-between high school, college year, but we're going to be revamping that and opening that up to anyone that's currently in high school, currently in college. We'd love to get a bunch of college players if they want to take some time off, whether it's for the fall semester, the spring semester, or the full year. And like Jake said, we get them involved year round, whether that's playing, coaching. We do lots of volunteer work outside of the lacrosse community. We learn Hebrew on a daily basis, whether it's in the class or from kids, or if I'm asking Jake what a word is. But there's tons of opportunities to come over here to Israel, to grow as a person, to live in another country, experience life outside the States or outside Europe or Canada, wherever someone might be from. But we almost have something for every age. There's ways to get involved. At home as well, all of our gear is secondhand, so anyone that wants to do a gear drive, we'd love to help you and help us with that. But we've got high school trips, college age trips, internships, gap years, gap semesters. So love to talk to anybody out there wanting to know more.
Hey, Stamper, I just want to sorry, I want to get back to, I love that question that you asked. You were kind of talking about, a short-term opportunity versus a longer term, or making it a career. And I think that's a great question. And it's a great point. Myself in Australia, right, it was a shorter term, and coming to Israel, I had no expectations, but in the back of my head, I thought it was a short-term thing. Especially because I and Seth and, a few other of our teammates were kind of the first ones here doing it. So at that point, it was really difficult at least for me, to wrap my head around making it a long-term thing or making it a career. And again, I think I'm happy to have this responsibility to show kids or college athletes that you can make a career out of the game. You don't have to be to play in the pro leagues to make a career out of the game. So I always try to reach out, and I'm always available as a resource to anyone watching, or if anybody has any friends who may be interested, to talk about my story and just how that switch kind of flipped for me, from it being just a little 6-month thing, to making it my total identity, career, everything. And it sounds cheesy, but if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. And I still feel that way. And, lacrosse is just such a constant for me, but I love that question.
One of the other things that came up for me as you guys are talking about this, and Seth mentioning, picking up some Hebrew here and there, and Jake, you mentioned that you didn't speak Hebrew when you arrived. I like the drapes open a bit. A little light's good. I was a little naive, I think, when I went to Netanya for the World Championships, and I just figured everyone would speak English. Talk to anybody, everyone would speak English. It's very Hebrew. It's a very Hebrew culture, and that obviously is a challenge when you get over there. And how you deal with it is good. It will be impacted by what we were talking about, how long you're going to be there. If you're only going to be there for a couple months, you might not learn much Hebrew, but I'm sure you guys have picked up a fair bit. How much of a challenge is that? Some. How much of a challenge is it, and how do you address that?
I think we both can answer this question, but the language, I think any language is hard to learn, especially even if after college. But at first it's a struggle, simply because you just don't know how to communicate, but you can do a lot with your hands, whether you're trying to ask or show someone something. I think we all started there, and then, looking over to the next guy, listening to what he's saying, capturing a few words, writing them down. But it's definitely difficult. Israelis want to talk to you in Hebrew, but they also want to practice their English. So they're very welcoming to new people. They want to know where you're from. So it's not, they will speak Hebrew. They also want to know who you are, what you're doing. So they'll also understand English. It's definitely very difficult. Jake's had some different experiences. I'll let him talk about it a little bit. He went through the Army, which kind of fine-tuned himself. I took a 6 months course. It wasn't enough, but it was a very basic level. I can coach lacrosse. I can order off menus. I can ask questions. I can get around. But it's definitely a hurdle and a challenge that we all accept and go head on at. But Jake's had some different experiences as well. So
I'd say a couple things about it. The first thing I would say is that I agree with Seth, and really anyone who, whether it's Israel, the Czech Republic, wherever you go where you don't speak the language, the initial shock is very frustrating, right? I wanted to come to Israel and be clear and be able to communicate and be able to, connect. And I was frustrated because I couldn't do it. And I felt like I needed to speak Hebrew to be able to do it. But I think that's the beauty of the sport and just sport in general, is that you don't need words to communicate, especially with kids. You can communicate through sport. You can communicate through the game. I can use my eyes. I can use my ears, my stick, my hands, anything to, communicate with an Israeli kid to show him, what this sport is about, what I'm doing here. And that really adds to the experience of playing, working, volunteering abroad, is, that kind of sense of that problem solving, that solving, how can I communicate? How can I show my passion for lacrosse without speaking Hebrew? And once you get back to wherever you may end up, if you don't end up abroad, if you end up in the US and you want to work on Wall Street, sure, maybe you didn't have finance experience abroad, but you definitely solved problems, difficult problems, by communicating and getting around in a foreign country. So I think it all just really adds to the experience. Sometimes I laugh, doing this thing. It's like a video game. You wake up every single day and you figure out how you're going to get around and do this and do that every day. How am I going to get the guy to come to my apartment and fix the air conditioner? How am I going to, do this or that? So, don't be afraid. Players, young people shouldn't be afraid to, pass something up because it's difficult or because you don't know the language, because that's the whole point, in my opinion.
One interesting factor, I mean, obviously you guys came over as players and got into coaching right away and got into organizing and developing. But I'm curious if there are opportunities for officials, for people who don't play, who are in other parts of the game. And also, there are men and women. It's not just the men who are developing in Israel. I mean, the women's game is growing, and there's I know a lot of women who come over and help with the programs.
I think to simply try to answer that question is there's opportunity for everything. We don't have, we're reffing our games. I've played countless years of lacrosse at the highest levels. I think I understand, slash, push, shove, keep your toes off the line, but there's certainly room for improvement for myself. And especially for our players who are coming up through the ranks. Our players are not only learning the game from us, but they're starting to coach themselves. So we would love to have any ref that would be wanting to come over here, teach us, ref our youth games, ref our men's games. Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about the women's program just for a second here. Sarah Meisenberg, if anybody's familiar with her, she's been the captain of the team. She lives here in Ashkelon. And I think that the women's side of it and the girls lacrosse side of it is even more special, just as special, if not more, because women in sport is not as much of a thing here in Israel. It's growing, it's developing, not just lacrosse, any sport. Women don't generally play sports here. And I really admire Sarah, Dylan Teitelbaum, Ellen McDonough, these women who live here in Israel and do that because it's an even higher hurdle to jump over, right? Because not only do I have to explain what this sport is and how it works, I need to get these girls out to the field. I need to get these girls in, some running shoes, because it's a concept that's completely foreign to them. And, again, just like I'm a role model to the boys, whether it's for, being a good person or being a good lacrosse player, Sarah with the girls is so much more. Just to have, a strong female, person in these girls' lives. Like, these girls want to come to practice. Lacrosse is great, but they kind of want to come and be around, our women's team who are such positive people and who are really passionate and are really moving the needle. So, I think that, what they're doing on the women's side is incredible. And they're great too. They just took second in the European Championships. They're great lacrosse players on top of that.
Yeah, the programs are growing, improving by leaps and bounds. And one of the things I want to address is, kind of the elephant in the room when Israel lacrosse comes up is people do talk about, I hear people saying, I find it annoying. So I imagine you guys must find it annoying. And people say, oh, there's just a bunch of Americans who are doing it. And I'm like, yes, they started as a bunch of Americans because there were no lacrosse programs in Israel. And Scott Neese and some people had this idea, let's create this sport here in this country. And I think the two of you are living testaments to the fact that it's not just guys parachuting in and playing. The amount of effort that you all are putting into developing it. And the coolest part about the whole thing is the whole idea was get all these kids into the sport, get them playing, raise the level up, and let them gradually come into the national team. And we're seeing, guys who are getting there and girls who are getting there. Ori Bar David was kind of an early adopter. He played with the team in Finland. Wasn't a key player. He's a young guy who was just getting into the game more, but he played and he did all right. And he and another player, some native Israelis, were playing for Israel last year at the World Juniors. And the number of Israeli players is in country is massively growing, and the level that they're playing at is also rising very quickly.
I think, people can think whatever they want to think. We can pay attention, not pay attention to it, but, Jake, might have his own, but, we know who we are. And, there's a lot of people looking at us, whether they know us or they don't know us. But there's, over the past 7 years, there's a lot of people that are starting to get to know us. Like Jake said, we've been to Uganda, we've been to Finland, we've been to the Czech Republic countless times. Jake and I went all through Germany, went like 5 stops just to help coach along the way. And I think those are the people that do know us, that have seen us on the circuit. They may not think that way. They don't really bring that up to us. But yeah, of course we hear it. We hear the chatter around the world, but we know who we are. And like you said, guys like Ori Bar David, who were born here, who learned lacrosse here, I think a big testament to, some of the stuff we've been doing was last summer at the European Under-20 Championships. We had a predominantly 98% roster. It was players born in Israel and that learned lacrosse in Israel. They won a few games, they lost a few games, but that's the trajectory we're going. And there's going to be haters wherever we go, and we just try to know who we are and we just brush them off.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's certainly entitled their opinion, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me, whether right or wrong. I just, what gets me out of bed every day is that I know that we're making a positive impact on so many young people's lives that, people can, again, they're entitled to their opinions, but, this is what drives me. And, serving in the Army, living here for so long, I'm happy, I'm lucky, I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to, be a voice, be able to represent any kid in Israel who's ever picked up a lacrosse stick. And, they certainly deserve that, right? And, it's such a new sport here. They need this kind of exposure. They need this, they need someone to represent them. And, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm happy that we can make such a positive impact. And, if people, don't want to believe that that's what we're doing here, and, they can believe whatever they want, anybody's welcome to come. They can come crash on my couch at my apartment. We'll take them to a youth practice and show them what it's really all about.
I'm very curious about the facilities that are available. I mean, there weren't, obviously, without lacrosse being played there weren't a lot of facilities. That's always a big challenge. We see that in England, in Switzerland, all kinds of countries have facility challenges. They're growing for sure. The center in Ashkelon has been created. I know it's a real hub for development. Tanya, of course, hosting World Championships, had 6 fields, and rolled out a great event in like a year and a half when they had to take that on. What are the facilities like now? How many places have them, and how difficult is it to have access to places to play?
We're pretty lucky in that we have our national training center that we had a huge fundraising project around Giving Tuesday last year, and that's our home base. Ashkelon was one of the first cities we started lacrosse in. It was a grass field. It's a municipal field. We worked through the sports municipality to get our time on it a few nights a week. And then, that's the only lacrosse field in Israel. Sure, we play lacrosse on other fields, whether it's the Wingate, the National Institute up in Netanya where the Worlds were. We've got relationships there. We could use the field there, but it's not a lacrosse field. Like our national training center here in Ashkelon, which we're extremely fortunate enough to have. It's been turf, so the grass doesn't dry out in the Mediterranean heat. Kind of forget what the question is, but the facilities, we're playing on basketball courts, patches of grass, or if we can get people to Ashkelon, that's the best place we have.
Yeah, I think that we are super lucky for our entire community who gave on Giving Tuesday, parents, friends, families, everybody. The Craft family has been, absolutely integral in all of this growth here in Israel. I'm not sure exactly if this is factual or not, but I don't know how many turf fields that are strictly lacrosse lines outside of kind of North America. So, I feel incredibly lucky that I have that a stone's throw from my apartment here in Ashkelon, Israel. It's kind of mind-blowing. But, like Seth said, and, we've been here, 8 to 10 years. We're still very, very new. And that being said, it's still very, very raw. So we'll play on a basketball court if we have to. We'll play in the dark if we have to. We'll play on the soccer field until we get kicked off by the soccer team. But that's certainly a challenge for us, because soccer and basketball are so dominant over here because, so many kids play it. All the best athletes are playing, at least now, are playing soccer and basketball. And they kind of get priority on whether it's funding or facilities or any of that. But I really do think the more we build, the further we're going to get along with that. And again, having the facility is just, we're so lucky to have it. And again, anybody who wants to come over and spend some time in Israel, you're more than welcome. We'll show you the field. We'll show you around. We'll take you to the youth practices, but it's definitely a challenge with the facilities.
We play field, we play box. We're fortunate enough to have a lacrosse field now, but we're playing on a caged-in basketball court, and we're always trying to look for other opportunities to, we don't know if in the future we might get a real box here, but I think that's a lofty goal we might have in the future. To get some boards and some glass here and keep it going for not only us, but the kids and the next generation.
Speaking of the next generation, I know the growth was exponential when you guys started. I know you guys and a bunch of other players have been going into schools, introducing the game and getting kids involved. And I've talked to plenty of people that it was very fast growth because there were just the percentage of players or the growth in the players was taking off. Is it still growing? What's the rate of growth of the game been like in the last year or two since you'd made the initial inroads and got so many people started on the game?
Jake, you want to start this one and then I'll kind of add some stuff to it?
Yeah, sure. So again, our executive director, Scott Neese, bringing the world championships here, bringing the women's European championships here. The more high level lacrosse that not only our players can see, but just the people of Israel in general can see, just legitimizes us more and more. So it's really, really continuing to grow. I can stand up front of a class and do backflips or whatever, but lacrosse is such a unique sport that it really sells itself, especially in a country that's ruled by soccer. Some kids kind of just lay eyes on the stick and the ball, and they throw one ball into the goal, and it's game over. And I also, one thing that I like to say is I don't like to necessarily gauge our success by the actual number of kids playing lacrosse in Israel. I just like to think about, how much of an impact the game has made on our players currently, right? So a kid who didn't even know about the sport, 6 months later, he's sleeping with his stick. So, the quality of players, the quality of our player pool and the kids and the athletes that we have, is just, going in the right direction. And, again, just happy and proud to be a part of it.
Can you actually do backflips?
I can.
Okay.
I got to leave something to the imagination.
I mean, the growth goes in both directions. We've had countless people over here spending, weeks to years, growing these kids, their love of the game as well. And, as the kids here start to participate year and year after year, they notice the programs that we run. We've got our high school winter service trip. We've got the IPLL in the summer, and, kids that are bringing their friends out to play, they're like, oh, wait till the winter till these Americans come, or wait till the summer till these European guys come. It's like, it runs both ways where, we bring people in to connect with our kids, and then, we have our kids connect with everyone that we can bring in as well, which just further grows the game, along with any sort of tournaments or championships we're able to hold here, or any sort of tournaments we're able to take them abroad to. They're growing themselves in their game. So we've got a lot going on.
I do want to mention, anybody who's got any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat room, and we will definitely address them for Jake and Seth. One thing, as you talk about events and the power of events to build excitement and really drive the growth of the game. And as I mentioned, I was over there in 2018 in Netanya for the World Championships, which was a pretty sensational event. And one of the cool things was, it was the Men's World Field Lacrosse Championships. So we'd head off to, to Wingate, and there's 6 fields, and there's games constantly all day. You're seeing all 51 countries or 50 countries taking part, nations, and it was sensational. But also, I was on like the 15th or 18th floor of the hotel, and we take that glass elevator down. And as you go up or down the elevator, you look across to the fields just across the road from the hotel, and the festival was going on. So there was in conjunction, there was a festival for younger men and women and club teams and that, nations to come and take part. And they were just as excited. You go down to the breakfast room, and there's men, women, girls, boys, from all different nations there taking part. And it was pretty neat to just see the excitement building around that. So you can really see how the events help to drive this growth and this excitement.
No, definitely. That was huge. We had 48 countries here coming to Israel and going home with a perspective of Israel that they didn't have beforehand. That was great. Kids were we were getting all of our players from all over the country to either come watch or come help. And then even the following year, we had the European Women's Championships in Netanya on that field you were speaking about. So there was games there all day long, going up and down that elevator. Our Israelis were helping us, run the facility. We were running the tournament. So back to Jake's multiple hats, we're fortunate and lucky enough that we get to do it all and experience it all. And there's a lot of lacrosse going on over here.
I think it's important, to me at least, to everybody kind of sees Seth and I on the Israel Lacrosse poster or flyer, and they know about Scott because he's all over the place. But it's important to mention a guy like Dave Lasday, who has been in it from the beginning and is just probably the hardest hustler that I've ever met in my life. He's all over the place, whether it's coordinating fields, getting into schools. He still goes into schools to recruit kids. And, it's important to really mention, that side of it, kind of I guess, for anybody watching this is probably the behind the scenes part of it. Not for me, but anybody else, really, the behind the scenes part of it. Dave's done such a great job to, get that hype, the same hype that everyone sees in North America or other parts of the world. He gets that same hype here domestically with our players, with, local news sources, with the communities, all that kind of thing. So, we're lucky to have him, and we're lucky that, there is excitement around it abroad and here domestically.
Yeah, that's a great point, because David, he puts a ton of time, money, energy, and passion into it. And there are lots of other people
that guy will be messaging me at 3 a.m. with ideas on how we can make lacrosse, more popular in Israel. So he's the man.
We have a question from one of the attendees asking about when you're doing introductory lacrosse workshops. What games, drills, setup do you use? How do you run them?
So it's a great question. I'd say that it's a little different here in Israel, just for the sole fact that no one's even heard or, sniffed the game of lacrosse before. If you're maybe in the United States, in a place in the Midwest where it's somewhat new, a lot of students have maybe heard it or seen it or, seen a video on Instagram. So something that we have to do here is you really start from the very basics. So where to put your hands on the stick. And, the first drill that I do with them is kind of hold the stick in the right position with the ball and just throw it up to yourself in the air about, a couple feet and then catch it again. And one, it's, that in itself is actually hard for someone who's never even seen the game before. But two, you really want someone who's new or someone you're teaching or someone that you're introducing the game to, you want them to succeed in something. So if you say something like, okay, pass to your friend, making one pass is something that, all of us here, it's super simple. Don't even think about it. But for a kid who does not even know what the sport of lacrosse is, it's nearly impossible. So give them something simple. Tell them to throw the ball up and then catch it. If that gets too easy, have them throw the ball up, do a 360, and then catch the ball. Have them, just scoop a ground ball. That's all you have to do is scoop it up and then put it back down. I'd say really, really stick to the basics. Let them succeed. Let them be successful. Let them feel that kind of sense of achievement. Let them feel that sense of, learning, that they're actually learning the game and getting somewhere with it. Keep it simple.
Seth, you want to add something to that?
The question was what to do with beginners.
Yeah, what games, drills?
I think introductory workshops more, really.
Yeah, so there's, we had a bunch of kids. We got more than and less sticks. We would do kind of Simon Says, and where you have, people across from each other. And, we're learning Hebrew, so we're like head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And then when we say stick, after we've taught them how to pick it up, how to try to cradle with it, they'll run towards the middle and try to box out their opponent for the ground ball. So it's a kind of introductory game with using Simon Says and a ground ball. As you could imagine, you might get some collisions going on, but that's where we get to introduce proper way to pick up a ground ball and box it out. And using another sport like basketball or soccer, how to shielding the ball. That's one that I liked.
Yeah, I think in general we try to compare it and draw parallels between sports that they might recognize, like soccer or basketball. That makes it less foreign to them. It helps them wrap their head around it a little bit more. Just comparing it right now. Yeah,
we do relay races. So, whether they just, have the ball and the stick out in front of them, they're holding the stick and they're running with the ball. You know, you get one stick, 4 people in a line, you know, run down the other end, run back, hand it to your teammate, the stick and the ball. If you have enough sticks, every player in line can have a stick, and they could run to the other end with the ball and then drop it on the ground. The next person has to pick up and run with it. You know, there's definitely things out there where you have too many sticks, not enough kids. But please, yeah.
I also invite anybody who is, you know, running introductory workshops, feel free to reach out. We can post our information. I'm sure it'll be blasted out. Feel free to reach out. And I love collaborating on stuff like that, because I still, you know, I've been doing it for however many years, and I'm still learning new stuff every day. So happy to collaborate with anybody on that kind of stuff.
One of the things too, Jake, I mean, you mentioned you're still learning things, but also when you start doing these things, you're learning so much stuff. And it's, I mean, there are the little aha moments of, hey, this really works to teach this person. I had to, my fiance, wonderful woman, wasn't really a sports girl, team sports girl growing up. So she's not used to a lot of throwing and catching and things. So I've gotten used to just like tossing her things just to get her used to catching and not being afraid of things. But she wanted to learn how to throw and catch a lacrosse ball. I'm like, perfect, let's grab some sticks, and out we go. And the natural reaction is the ball's coming to you. If you get used to not being afraid of it, is to stab at the ball. And the whole like, receive the ball, let the ball come to you and absorb the pass. And it's amazing how a little thing like that made such a difference for her. And that's just one example. I'm sure there are tons of things that you've found as you're going through these where you're like, oh, this really works, this analogy or this drill or whatever. And that's the kind of stuff I'm sure you'd like to share with people too, who are going through it. Because, you know, there are so many things we all need to learn as we start trying to teach things.
Yeah, sure. I think, there's certainly a little nuance with language too, because, you know, I could say the word for, you know, soft hands or something along those lines that doesn't exactly translate properly. So there's a little bit of nuance, but along those lines, I would also say that, you know, with introductory, you know, learning lacrosse doesn't necessarily have to be immediately with a stick in your hands. You know, we do things, you know, kind of tag type games where maybe you put a penny in the back of your shorts and you kind of got to protect that by opening your hips and you know, using similar movements that you would use in the game. But again, keep it simple. Yeah, find what works, stick with it. Find what doesn't work, get rid of it. But yeah.
I've definitely encountered that where, you know, a kid will, you know, you told him, you know, you start with your hands in front, you need to pull him back, and then, you know, he's got his hands in front, and then the pass is coming, and he goes to stab and punch at it.
I always go with the
like that.
Oh, sorry. I always go with the analogy. If anybody's seen Mighty Ducks out there, when Coach Bombay brings the eggs out on the ice, and they got to have soft hands to catch the pass and not break the egg.
Like you're catching an egg.
Something that's worked for us is kind of pretend that the ball's an egg. So when it's coming and you receive it, you don't want to break the egg. You got to be very gentle. And that's kind of helped them with that. So
yeah, I mean, another one. This probably only works for us here in Israel, but one of the hardest things for me to teach was cradling. There's no real word for it, and you know, you're just kind of like moving your wrist back and forth with a stick. We've come to find out, you know, instead of rock paper scissors, you know, there's a group of kids, you need minimum 3, and they play who's 3, and they shake their hands like this and then go up or down to see who's going to play or not play. And so I've been using that, you know, I'm watching what they're doing, you know, in the streets or at the waiting for food, and they play this game called Who's 3, Mi Shalosh, and to me that's like cradling. So when they take their hand and just go side to side, I'm like, no, you need to use your wrist. That might only be specific to us here in Israel, but not having a word for cradling, kids never seeing it before. That was one thing that I used. We noticed that kids will, you know, I'm right-handed, ambidextrous a little bit, but, you know, I've got my top hand at the top when I go to dig a ground ball, right? It's so foreign to these kids. Like, I'm using my right hand, but you know, we tell them left foot forward, but you would put your right foot forward to pick up the ground ball. All these kids will switch hands because to them it's just they're scooping something off the ground, like they're like digging in the ground. So, you know, instead of focusing so much, oh, you're right-handed, you need to have your right hand at the top, they would literally just switch hands to pick it up And someone told me it's because, oh, that's just Israelis. They dig with one hand. And so, like, now I'm saying, instead of picking up a ground ball, dig it off the ground. And I don't really pay attention to what hand they're doing it with, as long as they're comfortable and can eventually succeed at it. So it's kind of just like looking at the nuances of the person themselves and kind of tailoring to them, and not so much exactly how I learned it or would enforce it on a player who may have already seen the game. But it's going to be different for everybody everywhere. Those are kind of two that came to mind.
Yeah, we're getting near the end here. Well, that brings up one thing that's for me, when you're talking about the hands, that I was wondering about is when you get kids for the first time and you hand them a stick, how do you know whether they should go right or left? How do they figure that out?
We ask them what hand they write with, and if they write with their right hand, we tell them to put it in the middle of the stick to throw, and obviously it goes at the top to catch. And you walk around, you see that he can't really do it, like, hey, try it in the other hand, and we'll notice that as well. So we really just let them play around with it, whatever's comfortable, because it's so new. They've never seen it. Anything I tell them, they could just, it's easier for me over here. Like, okay, maybe you're left-handed in lacrosse, and you've never played lacrosse or done anything left-handed.
I'll tell you what, Stamper, I'm a big believer. I don't ask him what him or her, what hand they write with. I just kind of hand them the stick, see what hand they grab it in, because I myself am a right-handed. I write with my right hand. I do most with my right hand, but I'm a lefty in lacrosse. And especially, like we were saying in an introductory workshop, if they want to try and pass and catch with their right and then scoop a ground ball with their left, and that's comfortable with them and that's how they can do it, I say let it ride. And then, down the road, once we get them to practice, we'll definitely refine that. But, just to circle back, keep it simple. Allow kids, allow anybody to just be successful, allow them to achieve, allow them to explore, right? Allow them to try both hands, allow them to, try different things. I think a lot of, in these introductory workshops, a lot of people who are new to it might see a kid doing something that, no one does in lacrosse or they've never done. Yeah. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Let them explore. Let them explore the stick, explore the game, feel, that kind of different feeling in their body when they play lacrosse at the very beginning. Keep it simple, let them enjoy, and you'll see results.
To finish up, I'm just curious, we've talked a lot about the intro, going into the schools, getting kids who have never played, and you've talked about the player pool at the higher levels growing, and the national teams growing. I'm curious about the next steps for you guys for the national program in Israel. As you get more and more kids being introduced, they need to have places to continue to go if it's going to keep growing. What are the next steps for them and for you guys?
There's U19 championships every 4 years, and hopefully that's cut in half every 2 years with the European under 20. So, we're looking forward to these tournaments. And also there's other European men's club tournaments that we look to, if Jake and I will player coach and bring along some of our older, more experienced players to get that next level competition. But we want everybody to play lacrosse, whether they live here or there. We want people to come to Israel, experience the country, the lacrosse we have here. But we're just excited to keep these guys playing as much as they can, as much as we can coach them, and find any opportunity abroad or bring people to them that we can find.
Yeah, I'd say for us to continue to grow, you're either growing or you're dying, right? So to continue to grow, it's twofold for me at least. And one part of it is to continue to develop our young Israelis in what we have is called the Leadership Development Program. So these are our older players who have been committed to the game as players, and they come to practice and they're passionate, and now they want to become a coach. And I'm trying to help them be like me, be a coach, or forget be like me. I want them to be better than me. They'll be better at communicating with Israelis, and also with our U19 team as the head coach. It's not always about lacrosse. It's about being on time, being a good person, hustling, fundamentals. It's not necessarily about being the best player on the field. And I think that, you know, in the beginning here, that's going to be super important, and it's going to help us a lot down the road if we have guys who kind of understand those concepts of being a good person and being a good teammate. And then obviously the second half of growth of Israel Lacrosse is, please, anybody out there who wants an abroad experience, who wants to, you know, go out of their comfort zone, we're always welcome for any people, refs, players, coaches, fans, anybody to get involved, whether that's to come to Israel and get involved with our programming here, or, you know, we have programming in North America, get involved there, you know, shoot us an email, give us a like on Facebook, and anybody who's been to Israel. So anybody who was here in 2018, you know, you really are walking billboards around the world. Like, you know, talk about your experience with your friends and your teammates, encourage them to come to Israel, because, you know, this is not just me making a pitch. I truly think that we have so much to offer, you know, so much of a unique lacrosse experience to offer to people that, you know, you got to come out and see it for yourself.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. We're at the hour. We're trying to keep all the webinars too. So really appreciate your time, Seth and Jake, and appreciate everyone joining in. A quick thank you to our sponsors who are helping to make this Global Lacrosse Summit possible: Uncommon Fit, Major Series Lacrosse, Manitoba Lacrosse, Apex Lacrosse Events, the Power Team, Bear Paw Lacrosse Events, and Sticks and Picks podcast, and lots more still to come. And, you know, again, reach out to Seth and Jake if you have questions. Thanks, guys, for being on.
Thanks, Stamper. A lot of fun.
Stamper, thanks for having us. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll hope to see you soon.